Hey guys, so for this project, the VW Beetle project, it's just basically kind of a wireframing project. I just want to start off with giving you guys some tips, little tricks on kind of how to use the curves to create the shapes that you're wanting, and just some kind of quick pointers on things that'll be kind of time savers and general approaches on how to go about kind of constructing the wireframe of this model. So here is just sort of the basic shapes I've given you to start off with, which is basically just a curve up top and this circle piece down on the bottom. The image planes have already been set up, so everything should be to scale reasonably to begin with. And what I'm looking for is something more along the lines of this. Okay, so if we look at the car, okay, here's the car. Most of the shape, the detail is in this car, to where when I rotate it around, right, as I'm spinning this around, it allows me to visualize this car in 3 dimensions. If it was something that we were going to be then modeling with polygons or NURBS or anything, I'd have a really good idea of what the object is going to look like. Okay, so when you're kind of wondering whether you're complete or you're done or what to look for, kind of along these lines is probably be a kind of a good example. You can include more detail, connect more edges together if you want to. The main thing being that, you know, when I look at it from the front and from the sides and from the top, from all 3 directions, I see the 3-dimensional shape of this car. Okay. So the main tools we're going to be using is going to be under the curves, and kind of like I was showing in class, you have circles, and circles are complete loops. You can change the sweep 180, 90, and you can also change the number of sections, sections being the number of control vertices. With NURBS, you don't have the same options with vertices and edges and all that. What you have is more of an object mode, curve point, which allows you to select any point along the sweep of the curve, and then you also have control vertex. And control vertex are these little points that are similar to vertices on polygons, but instead of controlling an individual point, you're controlling more or less a section of the curve. Okay, and so in this case, if I have my circle, which currently has 8 sections, if I change that to 16 and click, what you'll find is that I have a lot more detail sections to work with. So circles can be real quickly used for real quick arcs, real quick half degrees, and also full round shapes. Alright, you also have this option over here for a square. Squares I'm not the biggest fan of, simply because all they are is a group of straight lines, and you can create straight lines using many of the other curve tools. So I really have not found a lot of use for squares as of yet. Next we have the EP curve tool. An EP curve, when you draw a curve, you can draw in the perspective view, but you end up getting, sometimes you don't know exactly what you're going to get. Generally speaking, when I'm drawing curves, I like to use one of the orthographic views, one of our standard front, back, left, right views, because it allows me to really draw the curve along a plane. Okay. And I find that's really helpful. And while it will be a flat line here, I can quickly move it where I would want to make adjustments and then push it back into space. Okay, that's the EP curve. The way it tends to work is just as you click, it starts to draw a curve. You also have a CV curve tool, which is kind of interesting. Forces you to click 2 or 3 or 4 times before it starts drawing a curve, and then it makes more of a gentle sweep with the curve. We also have the pencil curve tool. Don't use it nearly as much. It allows you to just use a pen tool and draw. The problem I have with it is if you look at the control points, it throws a lot of points out there. You can end up with a bunch of points that you may need to remove or add to or whatever. It also can create, instead of having nice sweepy lines, you'll notice that there's a lot of wiggle, wobble, and just kind of disconnect with it, which again you can fix that pretty easily, but you'd have to manually go back and tweak your curve in order for it to have kind of a better sweep. And so I find that's usually too much hassle for what it's worth. If it was a very complicated shape, I could see using this, but I find just taking my time with the EP curve tool works pretty well as far as getting a better shape that I'm looking for. Now with the curve tools, you also have a few more options up here. There's more of these also under the curves menu. Lock, length, bend, curl, smooth, align, add points, detach, move seams, extend. Lots of options up there. One of the things I want to show you real quick is if I use, here's the arc tool. Arc tool, simply click, 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 and it creates a sweep that you can then adjust. Okay, depending on what kind of arc you want to create. We also have the Bezier curve, curve editing tool, add points tool, rebuild curve, offset. Most of what we'll probably be using though is going to be something where we have the EP curve tool and you create a curve, and then we can also go select a curve point such as this, go and use this little knife here called Detached Curve, and what that gives me now is two curves. I have curve A and curve B. Okay, this can be very useful if I have a part, say right here or somewhere right here where I have a 90-degree angle and I want to make another curve kind of come off of that. That being said, the easiest way to attach two curves together is by using the curve snap. Now the curve snap works a little differently than the vertex snap and some of the other stuff we've been using. Use the move tool, hold down the C key, and then what you want to do is, instead of not clicking on the curve, what you want to do is Control Vertex, hold down the C key so that this lights up, and then middle mouse drag on the curve. You know it works when it snaps. See how it snaps? And as you drag, okay, it's going to lock it to this curve. Okay, so if you want to drag it, make sure it's connected at the actual end. Just drag it all the way through. Just drag it right through the object, and it'll snap right to the point. If I find I don't have enough detail, so for example, I have this and then that, and that's a pretty large gap, I can add a point. So if I go select curve point, say right here is where I want to add one, go over to the add point tool and click, it's going to give me an extra point. I'm sorry, that tool actually adds points to the end of it. So if I click on add point, it gives me a hull mode and allows me to add more to the end of it. The correct tool for adding a point will be the insert knot tool. So if I go to control point, curve point, click here, say insert knot, click that button there, then what we'll find is that there's an extra control point that it's going to add to it. So for example, if I want another point here, click, insert a knot, and you'll see it changes the curve slightly, and then go back to control vertex, there's now a point right there that I can now manipulate. So what I would do when completing this model is use a combination of the EP curve, circles, things like that in order to create your objects. Use the snap tools to snap them together, and use a combination of views in order to make your parts and pieces work. So in this case, I created this curve along the front of the model, just kind of going by the guide, right? And so what I'm going to want to do is use the top view here, looking at it kind of in all views at once, to help align the points that I've created with where they should go on the model. So let's just grab these guys, push it back kind of like this, and then looking at where the placement of all this stuff is. start pulling it where that line intersects in all these different places. So by only pulling in one direction, what I am doing is maintaining the placement along the curve from the front. At the same time, I'm repositioning it so that it functions correctly in three-dimensional space. So I'm changing along the X and the Y. So now this curve flows in the top view, also flows in the side view, also flows in the front view, and if we look at it in our perspective view, you'll see that it actually will form the 3D shape of the hood. Okay, so this piece right here is a perfect example of what you'll be doing for most of the parts for the car. Just again, start simply with outlines of different sections, then start bringing in connecting curves where you'll already have pieces created that you can link up. Using the detached curve, insert knot if you need to add more detail, but using detached curve, don't be afraid to make smaller sections and then snap them together, attach them so that they all fit. And best of luck. I'm going to go ahead and continue to model some of the car just to kind of give you an example. I'm just going to speed it up just to give you all kind of an overview. But for the most part, it's just going to be laying out curves, moving the control points, and snapping them together. Just make sure that you're using all four views as a way of making sure everything that needs to go where it needs to go works. Now, there will be a little bit of hiccup between the different views at times. Some of the curves, some of the lines on this drawing might not line up exactly with this one. You just kind of have to use your best judgment and fit it together. You won't always have access to perfectly aligned blueprints and perfectly aligned concept art. So just use this as kind of a learning exercise for that.